I've followed the band as a lot of people will have done, since you guys started out. And, I think my first sort of encounter with you will have been the EPs and kind of, coming out in sort of 2018. Well,
Yeah,
2018 time was when I kind of sort of came, the sort of, I Have Love, all that. And I wonder,
great.
yeah, I wonder for you, Theo, and I know you can't speak for the other members of the band, how would you say you've changed and developed during that time? Because, you've put out some bangers. A lot of people have got behind you. Streaming figures are good. Everything's cool, on the surface of it. But what have you learned? How have you changed and developed since you started as kids, basically, to where you are now with Lamb on the horizon?
That's a really beautiful question. Thanks for asking it.
Sorry, man.
Um, I think when I think back to how we were in 2018 and the years prior, we were very naive and very green. But there's one thing that I have a lot of pride about in the band, and that's that we had this incredible, just blind ambition looking back.
Yeah.
It was that we're gonna do this no matter what, to the fucking grave. Like
Yeah.
the neutral mode for us is hyperactive, creating as fast as much as possible, getting everything out there, trying to just really get to the heart of what we want to say.
Yeah.
And there was no reason other than that blind ambition to let us do it, because we know there's no money in music. You don't do it for that,
Yeah.
and there's no guarantee that you'll receive any praise from anyone else. That you just have to count on your own pride. But there was just this undeniable thing that it was just like, we have to do this,
Yeah, man.
and there was no reason for it except that drive we had and just the real just love for the music. So I'm really proud of that, and I think we still have that. But there's also where the major change is that we can see a direction and that we understand how releasing things work. We're adults now, and we understand the work and business element of it.
Mm.
So we know how to work that, and we know how to work with people and labels and management on whatever else, and we've sort of found a way to hold our own. So
Yeah.
while we do still have that ambition, that means we'll be making this music whether people are looking at us or not. We'll always be doing this,
Yeah.
but we know how to guide it towards something that is works with like a lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of, I don't know. It feels like it might be a dirty word, Theo, but you kind of, is it more like a brand now than just a band? Is that appropriate if I call it that? It feels like that's kind of what you're describing to me, is like the band as a brand as well as well as musicians. You're also managing a brand effectively in King Nun. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think oh no, yeah, no, it totally makes sense. I mean, there is that aspect. I mean, if you want people to listen to you, you have to make yourself look attractive. And I suppose the
Mm.
act of doing that is branding yourself.
Mm.
But so I think that is, I suppose, it's interesting that you said also, actually, because that's the same way I think about it, is that it's a separate
Yeah.
thing to the music.
Yeah.
Like that music is the thing I was describing that will always be with us and will always be pursuing for ourselves. But also as sort of a separate enterprise, we know sort of how to guide that and how to keep it safe and protect it. In the wider industry, which is ultimately, it's no great secret that it's a load of bollocks. So
Yeah.
just so we know better how to cut through that, and we've still got a long way to learn.
Mm.
I won't my previous answer, I don't mean to say at all that we don't have any naivety anymore. It's like
Mm.
and we're smart enough to know that we've still got a long way to go. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's that separate thing. That branding is something that I suppose we're aware of, and
Yeah.
I suppose if we weren't, we'd be in real trouble, right? Economy being what it is.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make, actually, and that prompts my next question. Really, is that as your reputation has developed, as you've done a lot of touring with, and you've kind of made a name for yourselves over the years, and just grafted and worked hard. Obviously, you've seen the viewing figures on videos and streaming figures go up. And I wonder, has your approach to success changed, Theo? And again, it's another question that I guess only you can answer, and I'm not sort of going to make you answer for the rest of the band, but in terms of your definitions of success and what it means to you, has that changed at all as you've seen the sort of growth and development of King Nun over the years?
I have to thank you again on another really great question. Thank you so much for making that distinction, because it's true that I'm sort of elected to do the interviews, but I can't speak for them, and that's definitely important to mention for this question particularly, because
Mm.
that's such a personal. So thanks for that. That's great.
Sorry, man.
Um, so but yeah, I suppose my definition of success, to be honest, I think it might have always been that there's something that I personally have to get off my chest, and I can't define that thing really. I think I found art and music so attractive from an early age because I could kind of get closer to sort of sharing whatever that thing is with people. But I just feel like I I have something that I need to tell people, and my
Mm.
definition of success will be uh, becoming a good enough musician so that thing is unmistakable,
Yeah.
so that I could write, so that I could write a song that somebody could hear and they would understand my experience, and I would feel like I would have sort of shared that with somebody else. And I think that's me. I think I could probably just go and work in a post office after I've done that. But it's about it's becoming a good enough musician that I can call it quits. That's probably it. It's all about me. I think. God, what a horrible quote.
No, no,
But
it's all good,
I,
man.
I'm counting on to be able to, at the end of the day, to be able to look back and be like, I really tried my best at that, and I tried to get better and better at the craft, and I've left something good behind. That's really it.
Yeah, I guess again that that craft you're talking about. Obviously, Lamb, is the subject of the day, and I sort of want to sort of ask you, in terms of a challenge on this record, do you feel like you've pushed yourself in new ways as an artist? On this record, like how have you challenged yourself? Because again, you know how to write pop hooks, you know how to write banging tunes. You could have,
Thank you.
there's songs, and I'll address a couple of them. There's songs that are heavier, and there are songs that have wonderful pop melodies on there. It feels like you guys have really tried to sort of push the boundaries of what your influences are. But that's my take as a listener. So for you personally, again, it's just to ask you, and I'm sure the other members of the band would have a point on this, but how would you say you've pushed yourself as an artist on this record in different ways than perhaps you have previously?
Great, wicked. I think I really, really, really fucking grafted with the lyrics on this one. I really, really wrestled with them because it's kind of what I was saying before. I just want to make them as truthful for me as humanly possible. I think more. Yeah, no, I tell you what. Yeah, sorry, it's coming to me now.
All right, so good.
I'm almost understanding what it is I'm trying to say. Um, I think maybe I was just trying to be more honest, and that's maybe something that hasn't occurred to me as starkly before.
Right.
Which is there's a lot of stuff in these songs which it's abstract for sure. I mean, that's just kind of by nature how I do lyrics. Like it's more about imagery and metaphors and stuff like that than it is kind of Johnny Cash. I fucking went to breakfast. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like more. It's more abstract than that. But I think I just really tried to make sure that I was resonating with stuff. And when I would read lyrics back, I'd be like, oh no, yeah, no, I remember I was in that place at that time. and that was a person that I know. And when I hear that lyric back, I go, yeah, that's true. That's me. And I
Yeah.
hope that honesty will translate so that people understand the emotion. But I'm not. I don't mean so that people would have to understand the exact stories and the people and the experiences that are behind the songs, but rather the lyrics would sort of be a conduit for the feelings that those experiences have in them.
Yeah.
And I think before, maybe in our previous releases, I was writing for the style of the song we were doing.
Yeah.
So our really, really early, very brash, punky stuff. The lyrics are kind of written for just in that immediate moment. You know, the sort of thing you don't have to write twice, that you just sing in rehearsal and it's done. That's just the way it is because it's part of the song. But I think, and there was a lot of that in Lamb as well, but I had my eye on just making sure that it had a degree of sentimentality, and that it just really, it meant something that was to me. It meant, oh, gee, what was that sentence?
Right.
It meant something to me that I recognized as honest. I
Yeah.
think that's probably how I pushed myself. Yeah, and that was immensely difficult actually, but
Yeah.
we did it.
Yeah, and you obviously, you touch on some of that in the PR, around kind of dealing with some difficult subjects. And there's a couple of sort of the more kind of pop orientated tracks. Obviously, you've got Lamb that ends the record, and then you've got But We Live on a Beach as well.
Yeah,
Very pop orientated, very hooky, but with what I would argue a very somber messages, reflective messages. And if I could ask you about some of the, some of the experiences and kind of the mindset you were in when you were writing those songs, because again, very poppy in terms of how they might, get to the listener, but much deeper in terms of some of the ideas behind it. You know what I mean?
oh, Jesus Christ.
You're all right.
That must have deafened you. I'm so
Okay.
sorry. That's I just love that you had that interpretation with the songs. That's fantastic because you really can't guarantee when you finish the song that somebody's gonna have the experience that you had writing it. But I'm just I know we mentioned it some in the press kit and that, and you would have seen that.
Yeah.
But no, I am. I really love that you got that from the songs because it's very intentional. It was I think the first thing that came with the album was the title. Like titles are just unbelievably important to me.
Yeah.
Songwriting wise. Once we have the title, I feel like I kind of understand what the entire project is as a whole. And I really won't write a word. I mean, the band and I are always sort of collaboratively, extremely democratically writing the instrumentals always. But I won't really write a word of lyrics until I have a title. And the word lamb, for me, came out of, so our first album was called Mass, that sort of had some biblical references on it and parodies. And so I was looking for something in that vein that could hopefully be a 4-letter word. And so I started looking through that sort of biblical reference. And I found this bit in Revelations when a giant lamb sort of shows up and wreaks hell on earth. In the apocalypse, and I thought that was great, not just because of the sci-fi fantasy weirdness, but because the lamb is always an animal of sacrifice in almost every religion. It's the animal that represents innocence and naivety and kindness, but it's constantly sacrificed and bled out, and then for it to eventually sort of wreak revenge at the end of that book, I thought was a really nice sort of metaphor for maybe being someone I think in this industry you sort of have to be kind of sentimental,
Yeah.
and you have to kind of be emotional in order to make your art.
Hmm.
And I think the industry will constantly beat the shit out of you.
Yeah.
So there we've got our analogies for lamb and sacrifices, and I like the idea of reaping revenge, but kind of doing that as this sort of coming back to basis with who you are, and realizing that we are flawed and we are constantly going to get beaten with a stick because of our anxieties and whatever else.
Yeah.
But I think that that means that we've got to come up and rise to that occasion, and understanding that that Achilles heel that we all have is often a beautiful part of us.
Yeah.
And you know, don't let the world crush it, because it's the softest part of us. But we ought to remember it's there and not steal over entirely.
Yeah.
Um, so I think so that was in mind when I was writing almost all of the songs, or all of the, or sorry, just the lyrics.
Mm.
Obviously, we do everything else all together.
Yeah.
Um, and so the experiences change from song to song. They go from kind of worrying about substance abuse in my friends and family, which I suppose they were kind of trying to escape
Mm.
from you know, a world that is really brutal if you're a sentimental and emotional person, which
Yeah.
most people are, to feeling a bit lost and depressed at a time where I wasn't living anywhere. I was sleeping on my friend's sofa. And then there's kind of this sort of cathartic realization at the end that all of that baggage and all of that weight is part of us, and it's really important. Catharsis is a really important part of the band, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not really into um, the sort of rock and violence for the sake of it. I'd rather it felt more like an upheaval, or
Yeah.
more like more cathartic. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting because I feel like the more you've explained it, Theo, it's like almost like the lamb is a representation of your like the band's you know, you talk about naivety and stuff, almost like
Yeah,
how far you've come. You wear the lamb, parts of you still are the
yeah.
lamb, but you're also about to wreak havoc on the world, and you know.
I think that is definitely that that is definitely part of it that I find quite funny. Yeah,
And there was another, because obviously we're looking at the kind of, again, that softer end there with the self-titled track, which, you know, kind
yeah,
of has that innocence there. But then you also have like escapism and selfish, which
yeah,
are
yeah.
very, very rooted, I would argue, in your former, you know, that early sort of that early material, the kind of a heavier, grungier almost stuff. Was that an intention to kind of to showcase how far you've come, how far the lamb has developed, but also have, you know, also have that vitriol of the earlier stuff in there as well, you know, because obviously there's a lot of people love you for that stuff too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I really wish that was the case, because actually that would have been great. I really like concepts like that. So I would love to take credit for it, but no, you're a much smarter man than I. That was really, it was on, the reason that's on there is because we really still are sort of musically the same band we were then.
Mm.
Is that we like that catharticness. I think escapism we were writing because we wanted to just fucking go berserk, just you know, smash some shit.
Yeah.
You know, just really just get into that mode where you're at a gig and you almost go into autopilot, and that sort of just mosh thing.
Yep.
We love it to pieces. just just sweat and jumping off shit and climbing stuff and
Yeah, man.
screaming and breaking stuff. That's, I mean, all of the sentimentality I love, and that is something we want to reflect in our songwriting almost always.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not impossible, I think, to represent that, and also that just kind of just earnest kind of I want to fuck some shit up right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they're not
yeah,
they're not kind of then they're not so different. I think actually, it's a bit like how it's possible for something to be extremely depressing and funny at the same time.
yeah, yeah. I like that. It's sort of duality, isn't it? You know,
Yeah, yeah,
you've taken. I didn't know about the research you did into the lamb stuff. So I've never seen a lamb as a something that could destroy the world. You know, but
yeah.
clearly,
I just found that was just something that got the ball rolling for me. I thought
yeah,
that was just such a funny thing.
it
I was
is.
just like, oh, that's great, that's great.
But that's interesting, isn't it? Because you're again the duality of of that kind of thing. It feels like there is a bit of that on this record where you are growing and developing the sound. You know, the sound isn't the same throughout. You're not. You could have. Like I say, you've made these heavier, grungier stuff that for me is what you are known for. But then you've also
Yeah.
you've come out with these softer, kind of, yeah, again, I'll use the word sort of poppier tracks. We live on the beach.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think poppy is a fantastic compliment
No, I
because
agree.
that I mean pop in my mind just means the melody is really strong, and that's
That's
like
what I think. Yeah,
fuck yeah.
that's the idea. That's when I think it can be a dirty word, but I think for me it's melody, it's hooks, it's what anchors people to the
Yeah.
songs. It's what's gonna
Yeah, me too, me too.
yeah, it's what's going to make people's heads bob, makes people's heads bob at shows. It's what makes people, listen in their bedrooms and makes people feel good. It makes people, the hook is can be what brings the euphoria. It can change people's. I mean, that's what I've got when I've listened to your records in the past. Is like I can be in like a certain mood, and then like a riff will play or something will happen, and for example, when I was listening to Escapism and when I was listening to, on the beach and stuff, that kind
Yeah.
of upbeat nature, even though the lyrics aren't necessarily that way, that the upbeat melodies to me, the melodies to me are pop melodies, and that because it makes you want to fucking jump around. So
Yeah, good.
so that
I'm
that
really happy to hear it. Good.
yeah, yeah. Well, couple more questions then, Theo, before we finish. To
Yeah.
sort of to round us up. Again, just to go back to the fact that you guys were very young when you did this, and obviously we talked about how when you started out, and we talked about how you kind of changed and developed. But I wonder if you were sat with yourself, and again, this is another question I guess you could pose to the rest of the band, but if you were sat with yourself like you sat talking to me right now from that time, that when you were, coming out of school, when you were, figuring out how to write these songs that then went on to the EPs and the first record, what would you say to yourself, your younger self, effectively? What kind of thing what lesson would you impart, Theo, on who you were? Even though it's only a few years ago, but I guess you've, like you said, you've kind of grown up with this band, you've grown up in this band.
Yeah. Um, I think I think I would probably just say because I think I'm a very worried person. I'm always very worried. I think
Right.
I think that's probably true of anybody that does art because if you're a creative person, it means that that your thoughts are always going to be creative in nature, and if there's something you're even slightly concerned about, you can apply all of that imagination onto that as well. And it was true. It was definitely true back then. But I think probably what I'd say is that I think I don't know whether to pose what I'm saying in the third or first person. I I would I think my heart was right always. Like the thing actually just the whole lot of us, all four of us, our hearts were always right about the music and what we wanted to go and pursuing what we loved. And the only times when we made missteps was when we overthought things. So I'd say, I think I'd probably just say, you're on the right path. Just don't overthink it. But having said that, there really isn't anything I'd want us to do differently. Really, I think we've been on such a beautiful adventure. I can't even tell you.
That's
There's not enough time in the world to explain it all. The
that's
places the places we've been and the things we've seen just because of the passion that we had for this beautiful thing is I'm so grateful for it all the time. And so I think I wouldn't want to say anything that would take me off course. I'd probably just say, yeah, stick to your heart. You're doing the right thing. Keep it up.
I love that. That must be nice as well to kind of say out loud. I guess that's like it's a nice little affirmation for you, I think, Theo. It sounds like that anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really I think it's really important just to be as an artist, just to know a good thing when you see it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I like that, man. All right, to round us off, then to finish us up, we sort of basically check whether I've done my job properly. Obviously, the record's coming out later this month, but is there anything that I've missed, Theo, that you want to plug and promote before we finish up today?
Just actually give me one. I'll be back literally in 5 seconds.
Yeah, all good, man.
Hey guys, when's the venue MOT show? Yeah. Great. So my band's outside in the corridor. So we'll be playing the venue MOT
Cool.
on the 28th of September. It's an album launch party. It's 18 plus, and it's going to be wicked. And so we're doing that gig, and we're also doing an in-store tour that you can find all the details about on our social media. Really, that MOT show, definitely every single person and their dog should come to that as long as they're over 18.
Fantastic. Fantastic. We'll send some people away. And honestly, congratulations on a wonderful record to yourself, Theo, but to the rest of the band as well. I'm very excited about it. And, as I say, I remember years and years ago, you guys coming out. So just, I can't wait to see where else you go, mate. And thank you so much for making the time for me today. I appreciate it.
It's all right. I've really enjoyed this interview. I mean, you're talking about checking that you've done your job right. You definitely have. I've really enjoyed all of your questions. It was a joy, mate. Thank you so much. Really.
It's an absolute pleasure, man. Don't worry about it.